All right, everyone. How are you? Welcome to this week's episode of our podcast. It's called Is Breakfast Included? Thanks for stopping by. On the show this week, Lisa and I sit down with Katy Krassner. Katy is the social media manager for Duran Duran. She's also the co-host of a Sirius XM radio show called Whooosh, which you can find on the Spectrum channel. Her co-host is none other than Simon LeBon of Duran Duran. Katy stopped by to tell us how she made her way from Long Island through the ranks of the music industry to end up working for one of the most iconic bands in the world. That's right, Duran Duran. She also told a bunch of funny stories and kept us laughing. All right, guys, it was a lot of fun. Let's check it out.
Okay, tell everyone who you are.
My name is Katy Krassner, and I'm very excited to be on your podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thanks for
Thank
taking
you for
time to
having
do
me.
this. Where are you from, Katy, originally?
Originally, which I'm sure anyone who listens to me on the radio can tell, I'm from New York. I grew up on Long Island, and I left Long Island as soon as I was able, which was to go away to college. And I didn't go back. So I love visiting Long Island. I take my kids to Jones Beach, and there are some restaurants I grew up going to, but I was ready to go when I was ready to go.
And for those folks who don't know what you do, you tell them what you do, because I'm going to get it wrong.
Well, there's a lot of I was a fan who got a job with the band kind of misnomer about me. And I always knew I wanted to work in the music industry. I wanted to work in entertainment. I was that kid that read TV Guide in the bathroom when I was 6 or 7, not celebrity. That's wrong. Entertainment really intrigued me. And I went to college and I studied communication and which I guess is what you did then. And I didn't get a job right away in entertainment. I had interned at Fox News, believe it or not.
Oh my God.
It was the late 80s though. And it was right when they were launching 21 Jump Street and The Simpsons. So it was actually, It was in the PR department.
We'll let you
so it was
slide.
actually, yeah, you'll let me slide on that. It was actually interesting. And that's what I, was focused on. It was the end of Jump Street. And I think Johnny Depp had left and Richard Grieco had joined as Booker, and he was getting loads of fan mail. And I answered, sent out pictures and whatnot. And then when I graduated college, I didn't get a job right away. I worked in an accountant's office. And then I started working at CMJ. I don't know if you guys remember the CMJ Music Marathon. It was sort of like a competition to New Music Seminar. So there's New Music Seminar in the spring and CMJ Music Marathon in the fall. And I was one of the producers, I guess was my role, of that yearly convention. And when there was no work on the convention, which took 6 months to do, I still worked there, but I watched soap operas at my desk. I didn't have much to do. So I went to get my graduate degree. And while I was doing that, I found out about, I used to read the trades at the time, and that Left Bank Management in Los Angeles was opening a New York office. And I'm like, that's it. That's my next job. I love their roster. They had Richard Marx. They had the Cranberries. They had the Bee Gees. They had Luther Vandross. They had John Mellencamp. They had En Vogue. And they had Duran Duran. And I said, that's it. That's where I'm going to work. And I sent my resume and I asked people who I knew who worked at Capitol Records through my work at CMJ, can you put in a word for me? And I, asked around a lot of places. And anyway, in 1994, oh my God, I'm dating myself really bad. They flew me to Los Angeles, and it was, I'm going to be a very bad ask Katy, but I believe it was the summer. And Duran Duran it was August, and they were getting their star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And Left Bank took me with them to, not with Duran Duran, but with them. Yeah. And I got to stand on the top of the Capitol Tower and look down, watch them get their star on the the Walk of Fame. And I'm like, this is so cool, and and then I didn't hear not a word. And in December, Left Bank hired me, and that was it. And I worked with the guy at Left Bank who was a manager, but also focused mostly on PR. And I worked with him. And in April of maybe March or whatever, Duran Duran, or the band Duran Duran, because they had an album coming out called Thank You.
Mhm.
And I always joke I worked everyone's worst album. And so, of course, because I ended up working.
There's a couple good songs on there.
It is. I'm just joking, because I ended up at Sanctuary Records at some point in my career, which we could get to later. And anyway, they were doing a photo shoot in New York City at the Waldorf Astoria, and the guy I was working for is like, you go. We're all busy. You go and manage this photo shoot. And I'm like, what? I don't know them. I don't know what to do. I've never done this. And he's like, you'll be fine. And I remember walking into this big suite, and I always make this joke. So if any people have heard me on podcasts before, I was like head to toe in an outfit my mother picked out for me at Sims. Do you guys remember Sims?
Oh my God,
Do you?
Yeah,
So
I
you
do.
can only imagine what I looked like. It's like worse than Filene's. I'm sure I looked like I walked off.
Me and
the
my
cover
mom
of-
were probably next to you shopping.
Yeah, I'm sure I walked off the cover of like Young Juday. I mean, it was bad. And I walk in, and anyway, someone, I said, hi, I'm Katy Krassner, and I'm from Left Bank Management. And Simon, it was a long, long suite, and he was holding a bottle of Evian, and he didn't say one word. He just flung it at me, because he didn't want to hold it for the photo shoot. And I caught it, and he goes, that's a good catch. And I said, thank you. And that was kind of like,
that was it.
It was
Sealed
it.
the deal.
I kind of became their person. I think they liked that I knew absolutely nothing, so they could say, order 10 bottles of wine at lunch. It's totally fine. And I'd be like, okay, and put it on my corporate credit card. I knew zip. And, I carried a green Karopi backpack, and I remember going somewhere with them and John. This was the day of limos, not SUVs. And John Taylor turned around and he looked at me and he said, lose the backpack.
I could totally hear him say
right?
that.
Lose the backpack.
That's hilarious.
So that was the beginning.
Right on.
And I became their
person. Were you a fan of theirs before
I
this?
definitely 100% was a fan of
Okay.
theirs. But that has nothing to do with, every girl, especially, I don't want to say every girl that grew up on Long Island, but I was very into Brit pop. So I remember going to an import record store. My dad lived in New York City, and buying Carnival before Duran Duran was ever on the radio in America. I thought they were cute on the cover, and that's how I chose things then. Those guys are cute, and it's imported from England. And so
It's
for
gotta
sure,
be good.
right? That was how I made all my choices. Do you guys remember the band Roman Holiday? A little. They had
don't.
one song, I think, called like All Fall Down, or I'll have to look it up. But they were another band that had a really cute cover. They were kind of all dressed as sailors or whatever.
Oh.
And I bought that at the same time. And obviously Duran Duran did a lot better than Roman Holiday. But anyway, yes, I definitely was a fan. I was really into them. Then I went into I got really into Adamant. I paid someone in my high school to paint Adamant on the back of my jean jacket. And then I went to Def Leppard. So that was a blip. I don't know what happened there. But anyway, I definitely was a fan.
How has your job evolved over the years? You said you've worked for them since the 90s. So I'm sure your position and your duties have changed a few times.
A little bit. So I did more PR-centric stuff for them. And then Left Bank was closing their New York office. They were in with a ad agency, and I guess they didn't renew their contract with the ad agency, or I don't know. I'll be honest, no one asked me to move to California, so I was out of a job. And Duran or Nick, who was so amused by my clothes, but really loved my mother, Lois, said, you have to stay with us in some capacity. And at that time, there were a lot of fanzines. It was the sort of the mode of fans keeping up and trading stories with each other. There was, not very many people had a home computer then. And if they did, it was dial up. And I know there were loads of like boards, like message board or the nascent message boards, but there were so many fanzines. So I continued to be the fan liaison for them. And we also had an 800 number, which I would love to hear one of my recordings today.
Oh my
I
gosh.
would love, I don't know if anybody has any of them, but I would do like weekly updates. And then it became like monthly. It was ridiculous. But in
They would
90s,
call the 800 number
they
and
would,
hear your update. That you
yeah,
would, oh, cool.
yeah. And it would be like, hi. And I mean, I sounded so Long Island. And I was so unprofessional. I had my 9-year-old nephew do an update once. It's like, why? Why would I do that? But I did. It was really, no one was watching me. And then around 97, so it wasn't, or maybe 98, it wasn't that long, Duran Duran launched their website. And I was an integral part of that. And that was really, in hindsight, such a gift to me because I got in so early on something that was, not the norm, certainly not the norm at the time. And they had this Flash website. And we did start a column called Ask Katy, which if you had email, you could email in a question. This is when AOL was really like everyone got those discs and were putting it in their computers, downloading
The dial-up.
AOL. Yeah, the dial-up. And I got a lot, so much so that we did a book. But at the time, and I would collate the questions by guy. And then I would do like a call with them and they'd answer it to me and I type it. And then, we'd post it on the website. That was also unusual, to have that kind of access to the band. And I'm not and meanwhile, I had a full-time job. And I think back and I'm like, I must have been insane. I had a full-time job. I worked at Hollywood Records. And then I worked at an independent publicity office for about 18 months. Then I worked at Hollywood Records because I had done independent PR for 98 Degrees, who was like the third tier of the boy bands. It was like Backstreet, NSYNC, and then 98 Degrees. But it was so fun.
Nick Lachey?
Nick Lachey. When I first met him, I said, are you Nick Lachey? And he's like, Lachey. And I'm like, okay, dude. They were lovely, though. Lovely guys. And I did so many cool things with them because they were just coming up. And, NSYNC and Backstreet were sort of like untouchable. So I did like the Christmas tree lighting with them and the Thanksgiving Day parade and loads of stuff. And previously I'd worked with a band from England, not a boy band, but sort of a boy band called BB Mac. And I got to do lots of great stuff with them, too. I think you and I, Bernie, we know Bob Davis, right?
Yeah, Bob Davis, yeah.
He was their tour manager. That's how I became friendly with him. And anyway, so Hollywood hired me away they were very late. If people don't know, Hollywood is owned by Disney. I don't even know if Hollywood still exists. And they were very late in launching their boy bands and girl bands, which is weird. You'd think they'd be the first, but they weren't. And like I said, everyone's worst album. Yep. And so I worked some not notable bands at Hollywood, except for BB Mac. They were great and a great album. Rob Cavallo produced that album. And then I went to Sanctuary Records. And this whole time I'm working for Duran Duran. Like ridiculous. Ridiculous.
You
And
didn't have kids yet, though.
I didn't have kids. Didn't have kids.
You had a lot of time.
Right. But I had a big job at Sanctuary. I was the head of PR. I had like a big job. And I don't know how I did all this. And then Sanctuary went out of business and was absorbed by Universal Republic. And I went and worked at Universal. They took me, which was nice. I did that for about 18 months. And I wanted to have kids. Now I'm old. Now I'm getting old. And I wanted to have kids. And I was flying out to LA a lot, because a lot of the TV was still in LA. And I said to the guys, if I quit, can I just work for you? Because social media is getting really big. And, I started their MySpace page, and then Facebook came to us and said, I noticed you're so active on MySpace. Would you do a Facebook page? And I said, I asked them, I said, sure. And I don't even remember what was launching around that time, but they said, yeah, let's try it. Let's give it a try. It wasn't like full-time, but it was enough that I could stop traveling so much. And that was it. And then it just got bigger really from there. And yeah. So now I'm the director of their social media is mostly my job. I still have Ask Katy, the email address. And I also host a radio show with Simon called Whooosh. It was ridiculous. Ridiculous. And I don't shop at Sims. They closed, but my wardrobe is slightly better now. Not much. Not much.
Nice.
You're making me laugh. Okay.
I think I've told this story before, but I just have to tell it again because you probably have a wider audience. I was on a mini tour with Duran Duran in like 95. They were doing radio shows, and we were in Boston, and I came down, and I was wearing a suede fisherman's vest that my mom got at Sam's. It was so ugly. It was so ugly, but I thought
fisherman's vest.
Fisherman's vest. And ironically, Nick was in the lobby. Because if anyone knows Duran Duran, Nick's never in the lobby first, but it was like in the afternoon. And he takes one look at me and he goes, "What is that?" And I'm like, "It's the suede fisherman." And he's like, "Seriously, Catherine?" He's the only person that's allowed to call me Catherine. And he said, "Where did you get that?" And I said, "My mom got it for me." And he goes, "No." He loved Lois. He said, "I don't believe Lois would buy that for you." And I said, "I swear." And John was sitting there and he's like, "It's pretty bad." Which he would not necessarily do, right? He would not, unless you asked him. And then Warren Kugrilla was there, and he's like, "It is bad. He's like, it's big, it's misshapen, it's bad." And I'm like, "Really?" And then Simon comes popping off the elevator, and he looks at me and he goes, "I like your vest," which is so Simon, so awesome. I never wore the vest again, just so you know. Anyway,
how did the idea for Whoosh come about?
Which was really Simon's baby. It was during COVID, and we were thinking of ways to keep the band active. And John did his great, which I'm sure Bernie knows well. Was it Love, Bass, God, something?
Well, Stone Love, Bass, Odyssey.
Love, that's it. And those were incredible. He almost drove me to drink, but he was full on in his perfection in those, and he was amazing. Amazing. I wish he'd restart them. My nervous system doesn't, but I do. They were incredible. And Roger did a Desert Island disc. Nick never really, I don't know, we were supposed to do like an art photo gallery thing with Nick. It didn't take off. And Simon said, "I'll do like a little radio show, but I have to do it with someone. I'll do it with Katy." And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, it'd be funny. We'll do it together. We'll do it together." Because I also host these things called Katy's Cafe, which is another great thing, I think, that Duran Duran do once a month. We take off August. A different band member does like a little interview in the cafe, we call it, and it's for members of the fan community. So not everybody. It's like a perk of the fan community. So Simon's like, it'll be like a cafe. We'll just listen to music, talk about it. And we did. And it was goofy. If you can find the early episodes, they were long and they were goofy, but people loved it because there was nothing to do during COVID. So they listened to it. And we put it on duranduran.com and we put it on YouTube. But then we started getting popped because we did not have it was not legal for us to play the songs. We weren't paying anybody. We didn't have a license. So we were like, "Yikes, what should we do?" And the label sort of got into the fact that Simon was doing this. It was becoming a little bit notable. And they pitched it to Spotify, who took it. And that was super cool. And then we were on Spotify for a little bit, maybe not quite a year. and it was good. It was good, and it was anyone could listen to it if they had a subscription to Spotify. But the rub was, and I'm not really sure why, I still haven't found out. They put it like voiceover 1, voiceover 2, and then the songs on the other side. So you had to like figure out how to play. It was like a puzzle. Who needs to listen to something that way? So you'd play voiceover 1, and then you got to find like the 2 songs and play. It was kind of like, okay. And it was supposed to get better, or it was going to get better, but then Sirius came and said, hey, you want to bring a show over to us? You won't have to put together the show. You'll have, it'll be like a real show. And we started out on a channel called Volume. And then we got up to a channel called The Spectrum, channel 28. And that's where we currently reside every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern and Monday at 10 p.m. Eastern at any time on demand on the SXM app. I like that for a plug.
Right on. So you're basically doing Duran 24 hours a day.
Kinda.
I
think so. I'm going to send that clip to management. I work 24/7.
I think we all are.
Yeah, we could send that clip to management too. I do have a few other clients, but nothing like Duran. Yeah, nothing like Duran. And if I'm not doing Whoosh, and Simon chooses all the music, but I do all the research on the songs, and I'm not responding to fan queries, and I'm not updating the website or recording the cafes or putting things on social media. And just for anybody who is curious, the band really curate the social media. So even though someone might want me to share something on social media, and they're like, how come you didn't share this? The band were at such and such, and you didn't put, and I'm like, not up to me. So I come up with lots of clever ideas, and a lot of them they love, actually. They do give me a wide berth. A lot of them they love, but some of them they think are goofy and they don't love. So anyway.
In dealing with, so you are the first point of contact, or you're the in between the fans and the band. Like,
yeah.
What do you ever find it like, like almost like a parent? Like, why can't you just behave with some? Because I'll be honest with you. I mean, I've been around 15 years. I know how some fans can be a little much.
Yeah. Yeah. I have made some good, actually, like a couple of friends that I have that I would say are real friends, like I would have dinner with. I have met through the fandom. I wouldn't have met them in any other way. And we rarely talk about Duran, my friend Robert, my friend Lee, my friend Michelle, a young woman named Sabrina who actually does what I do. Literally, like, she's under 30 and came up to me at a Duran show and said when she was a teenager, she knew I'm paraphrasing her because she was so much more complimentary, but what I did for Duran inspired her to go into this line of work. And that was really nice. I definitely try and intercede where I can, but then step out because, it gets crazy and nasty. And I parent my own 2 children, and I can't also be seen as favoring anyone. What's hardest for me, though, are people who send in a request and say something like, my mom is going to be 50 and she's going to be in the 3rd row at the show in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And can Simon just call her up on the stage? And I'm like, I get it. I do. I totally get it. But, like and the real reason, and it's true, is if we said yes to one, then we'd have to say yes to them all. And then he'd spend an entire show wishing people happy birthday. Yeah. But I do wonder about the people who then write back and are like, well, then fuck you. And I'm ripping up, all my records. And I'm like, really? Okay, well, then you have an issue because at least I wrote back.
Yeah.
I'm giving you the courtesy of a reply, even if it's not what you wanted to hear, I'm replying. Some people get really aggro, like, fuck you, you fucking bitch. And I'm like, can you find my address on the internet? That's like the first thing I always discuss. And I remember I said to Nick, there was something with renewing a website. And I say, I pay for privacy. And he's like, why? I'm like, whose address is there? Yours or mine? He's like, okay, calm down. So, yeah.
How do you navigate the challenges of keeping the band's legacy fresh and then also appealing to newer generations?
That is such a great question. And I think if I had the best answer in the world, I'd apply it to other people. Duran Duran have continued to make great music and continue to work with current producers and put out new albums and stay current. They play, festivals that are geared toward younger people, at times. And they don't do heritage tours and things like that. And that's what I mean when some fans are like, it was the anniversary that Seven and Ragged Tiger came out in Belgium and you didn't post anything about it. And I'm like, I know. And I know that that's important to you, but we want to keep, they're not a legacy band. They're very active. One of the things, I don't know if you guys noticed maybe you didn't, that I recently did on their socials is I created a video with what your birth month corresponds to a Duran Duran song. And that was fun. And that mixed some of their older songs with some of their newer songs. And that was fun to do. And it, I won't say it went viral, but it definitely crossed the boundary. There's always in my mind a number boundary. So I know when a post crossed the boundary from fans to like being shared a lot, not just Duran fans. And of course, the song Invisible has taken on a life of its own with gamers in a way that nobody expected. And that's been an incredible surprise. So they do the work, but I do have to be mindful in what I post and not to be, too legacy.
Yeah. When
It's
something
hard.
like that happens, like with Invisible, taking a life of its own with gamers, when something like that happens, how quickly do you act on it? Like, how quickly do you jump on it and go, let's ride this? Does the band jump on it, or is it something they want to like, we don't want to, he's on vacation. He just happened to jump up with this kid. And
Right. That's a fine line because it's somebody having a lot of fun with a band member, but I also want to respect that Simon's on vacation and he did that not because he thought it was going to end up all over the internet. So that's not something typically we would repost. Of course, I did see it and it was such a sweet thing. There's actually something that's going around now that I hope more people see. I just saw it, and it's just an adorable picture of Simon and this little girl. And for Christmas vacation, just this past year, she was going to England to visit her relatives, and her teacher is a huge Duranie. And she said to the teacher, the girl was like 9, like my daughter's age. And the teacher said, don't forget me, bring me back Duran Duran, like joking. And the girl's relative was in the town that Simon lives in. And the girl was telling her relative, oh, my teacher's such a big Duran Duran fan. And the relative's like, oh, he lives like 2 blocks away. I know where he lives. And on Christmas Day, this little girl and her relative knock on his door. And Benji, his son-in-law, answers the door. And she says, my name is what, I don't know her name. And I'm from America. And and he came out and said hello to her on Christmas Day, which is so nice.
Wow.
And sat and took a picture with her. And I guess
nice.
So nice. The local news where she lives picked the story up and just wrote, I feel like it's somewhere in the Midwest, wrote a story on it. And of course, I get all the Google alerts on Duran Duran, and I saw it, and I'm like, I sent it to him. I'm like, you told me not to tell anyone how sweet you are, but now everybody's going to know.
Yeah.
That is nice.
But it was really, really sweet. So, I didn't post it though, because it's,
Well, then everybody's going to go to his house.
Well, there was more specific information in that article than I am sharing. So yeah, I didn't post it, but it's a nice story. It really is. He's a nice guy.
And if anybody knows him, that's not surprising.
No, it's not.
There's a story I tell, and maybe I'll tell it off camera, about him when I first came on board to this organization, and it right off the bat just made me admire him even more. And I wasn't a fan coming on board with this. I remember my first show with them. I was like, oh, they play that song.
Yeah.
I'd heard the name and what have you, but yeah, to anyone who knows Simon knows that's not surprising. He's probably one of the most genuine people in the organization, and they're all four of them are amazing.
They're all really nice guys. I see, people don't realize, one of the things I like to tell people is they were so young when they got famous. Like Nick was 16 when Planet Earth was a hit in Australia. I mean, they were young. And 18, maybe he was 18. I think he was 16 because he's the youngest, but they were so young. I mean, Nick had his 21st birthday at Studio 54. So, he was already notable at that time, just 21. And they really all have such big hearts. My son left for a trip today. Bernie knows my son, and maybe you do too, Lisa. Tanner is so into music, and he plays in the school band. He's a drummer, and the school band went to Nashville. So this is the first, he goes to sleepaway camp, but this is different. This is like the first time he got on a plane without me. He's 14. Of course, I was like, oh my God. Wreck. And Nick sent me a text this morning and said, did Tanner get off all right? Because of course, for days I've been like, I can't believe Tanner's leaving without me. And anyway, they're such nice people. All of them. Roger is just a doll. And John is so funny. You're right. You could totally hear John telling me to lose the backpack, but he's such a funny guy. Doesn't mince words, so warm. Really also crazy about my son. Bernie knows, always warms up when they're warming up, lets Tanner play the drums. Just such good guys. Really. Yeah. And I've worked with assholes, trust me. All those artists on Sanctuary, some of them were doozies.
Yeah. Is there a passion project or a hobby outside of Duran Duran or outside of music that you have?
My husband says I need to get one. My kid, I have 2 dogs, 2 kids. I don't know both my kids are going to sleepaway this summer. So if either of you want to give me work, let me know. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll be down 2 children this summer for a couple of weeks. No, and I should get one. No, I really still love entertainment. So I see a lot of movies. I watch a lot of shows not a lot because I don't have time, but I like to watch shows on streaming. I wish I had time to read more. I like to read a lot, and I never have time, ever. I read 4 books last year, and I almost made a donation to a charity because I was so proud of myself that I actually had time to read 4 books. I'm like, oh my God. So yeah, no, I need a hobby. So suggest one to me or give me some work.
What advice would you give to someone wanting to work in artist management or publicity or?
Don't do it. It's so different now. I'll be honest with you. It's really such a different industry. I wouldn't even know what the label system looked like now, but it's not something I wanted to go back to when my kids got older. I never, ever wanted to go back. I went from it was a natural progression to go from publicity to social media, because certainly in the beginning of social media, before cutting videos, which I'm actually pretty good at now, but before all of those tools were made so readily available, it was just writing, right? So I was a good writer. I wrote press releases, I wrote bios. So it was, it was a natural progression for me, but I don't even know that. I think it's such a boys club, I'm sorry to say. It really is. And it's certainly not where I would want to work today. So I think if you were to go into the music industry in the business, not as a performer, I might go at it alone, not, do your own thing and make yourself valuable to people that will appreciate the effort that you make. I always tell young artists, though, especially who come to me, I won't do their social media because if they can't be authentic at the beginning of their career, of course, Duran should have someone running their social media. They earn that. But if you're just starting out, even if you have like a top 40 single, I don't even know how that works anymore. Or you have like a runaway track on TikTok or whatever, you've built your own fan base, you have 1 million followers. It's because you've been authentic and you grew your fan base that way, and people love being part of that community. And to pawn it off on someone who can't speak in your voice is a mistake when you're young. So, you can be like a helper, if you wanted to start in social media, you could work with somebody, but to get their stuff up or to remind them, like on Thursday, let's talk on the phone and give me some things you want to talk about or you want to post, or let's film a few videos. It really has to be authentic.
Yeah. What's the strangest request or gift that anyone has ever sent the band?
What I think is weird is when someone will say, in September 1993, when Duran Played at such and such, I threw a shirt on the stage and I want to know if John got it.
Yeah.
And they're like, it meant a lot. And again, I want to respect that. It meant a lot. They took the time to send me the email, and I want to respect that. And I say the same thing, which is probably, the band are so grateful for everything that fans give to them, but it would be impossible for me to find out if, they got that.
Yeah.
And that's true, but I don't think anyone realizes what a bizarre request that is. Or like, I was in the audience and I saw Nick taking pictures. Can you find me that picture? No, I can't. But the weirdest request that started as a mailed in letter, because we do still have a P.O. box, but get barely anything to it. But in the early days, the P.O. box was in New York City. My mom, Lois, would go to the P.O. box once a week and come home with a lot of mail and open the letters. She was my little sidekick. She'd help me. And we'd always send something back. But there was this guy named Dewey. I don't even think it was his real name. Dewey, if Dewey is listening. He's probably going to be so thrilled by this. And it would say...
He probably is listening.
It would say, Hungry Like the Wolf is my favorite song, and I want Simon to take me on a shoulder ride while he sings Hungry Like the Wolf. It's like fucked up, right? It's like weird. A shoulder ride. Like I assume, like get on Simon's shoulders and Simon like runs around singing Hungry Like the...
But this is an adult.
This guy, Dewey, is crazy, but like once a month. And I forgot about Dewey until 2 years ago. He started emailing the same request. They all say the same thing. And he's either like, it's either his birthday or it's his half birthday, or it's like, a full moon in whatever. And for that occasion, he would like to go on a shoulder ride on Simon Le Bon's shoulder while Simon sings Hungry Like the Wolf.
That is so crazy.
It's creepy. And I don't reply to Dewey. So, yeah. And then there was a guy, I can't say his name, who was at... Bernie, did you grow up in New York? Or Lisa, did you grow up in New York at all?
New Jersey.
Yeah.
New Jersey. Do you guys remember Creed? Do you remember Creedmoor, the like insane asylum in Queens? No?
No.
Creedmoor. That was its actual name.
Oh, no.
And anyway, this guy would write every week from Creedmoor. And it was crazy. And my mom passed away in 2021, but but this guy wrote a lot, like in the early aughts. My mom finally called the hospital and said, like, do you have a patient by this name? And they said they knew, and it brought him, like, so it was not, I felt differently about him and his letters after that, because it gave him a lot of happiness to write the letters. It made him, he like would tell people that he was their friend. And I felt bad. I know, like everyone has a story,
Yeah. That's what we say. Everyone has a story.
Everyone has a story.
Our podcast is called Is Breakfast Included? And if we were having breakfast, what would you have?
Well, it depends on my mood, because sometimes I like sweet and sometimes I like savory, but I would either have French toast with turkey bacon on the side, because I don't like syrup on my turkey bacon, or I'll get an American cheese omelet with turkey bacon and well done home fries.
Nice.
That's good, right?
Yeah, the well done.
I only ever get 2 things, so it's easy for me to know what I would get. Oh, now I'm hungry.
Breakfast for lunch.
I love it. Thank you guys again.
Yeah,
this
thank
has really
Thank
been
you
a
so
treat.
much. This was really fun.
Thank you for
Thank
taking
you.
the time. And I'll see you on the road. It's
You
good
got
talking
it,
to
buddy.
you.
You too. Thanks for
All
everything,
right.
you guys.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Right on. Katy Krassner. That was a lot of fun, right? You could find out more about Katy and Whoosh Radio at Whoosh Radio on Instagram. And that's Whoosh, WHOOOSH Radio on Instagram. And make sure you check out the radio show on Sirius XM Spectrum channel on Sundays at 7 p.m. and Mondays at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. While you're online, make sure you check out isbreakfast.com. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram from that page. Go to our YouTube page, subscribe, comment, good or bad, we don't care. And make sure you rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. All right, guys, I am done. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next week.